right, some developing news even as we speak. This afternoon, some federal investigators arrested a 21-year-old Massachusetts Air National Guardsman that they believe leaked a trove of classified U.S. intelligence documents, which both exposed weaknesses in the Ukrainian military, and no doubt it's affected U.S. relations with many of our foreign allies. The Guardsman is identified as Jack Teixeira. He's been connected to an online group where the leaked documents first appeared. And joining me now to discuss this is FRC's Executive Vice President, retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, who had an amazing 36-year military career, the last 4 of which was as the Deputy Undersecretary for Defense for Intelligence. And, of course, he was an original member of the Delta Force as well. General, I know you've been on the road. Thank you for making time to join us this evening and to talk about this breaking news.
It's always good to be with you, Jody. Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, let's, what do we know so far? I mean, all this is coming at us pretty quickly right now. What do you know so far?
Well, I don't think we know everything yet. What we do know is just what you said, that he's out of an Air National Guard unit, which is actually an intel unit. So the question then becomes, who gave this man a clearance that he would have access to all of this kind of material? And I will tell you, in terms of counterintelligence, which is how we stop people from doing just this kind of thing, has failed miserably here, not only because they gave this young man who is very low ranking, they gave him a clearance that gave him access to all of this stuff. And somebody has to explain why this man had a clearance to begin with.
That's a great point. So are you saying then that it would not be normal protocol for a state National Guardsman to have this type of classified material to begin with?
It is not the norm, no. And if they gave him one, it had to be for a specific purpose. You know, and you know very well, in the intel community, and I spent a couple of years over at the CIA as well, so I've been around this stuff a long time. And you work on a need-to-know basis. In other words, you don't have access to any intelligence unless you have a need to know. And part of the problem here is one of the things that the intel community takes very seriously is exposing methods and sources. And it looks like now that as a result of this, we've exposed both some sources, just by virtue of what the intel is, it's clear who it came from. And then methods. How was it collected? And we don't want the enemy to know how we collect our intelligence. And so you've got a bigger problem than just people reading and knowing some of our secrets, but you've also got a really serious problem with exposing some of the people that we got this intel from, or some of the methods that we used.
This is my understanding so far, General. This is like one of the largest leaks of classified intelligent information in our military history. And you wonder, how in the world does this young man have access to this type of thing? And so it's frightening to think that this whole thing could develop. Does more of this type of leaking of information take place than what we're aware of? Or is it becoming more and more of a problem these days? What in the world is going on at the Pentagon that is seemingly so susceptible and vulnerable to this type of thing taking place?
Yeah, and after 9/11, we put together the 9/11 Commission and studied that. And one of the conclusions was that too much of the intel was not shared. It was not shared with the other agencies and the people that really did have a need to know. So a law was written called the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act. And what that did was it forced the sharing of information, which meant that you could go to a common server, for example, and see what the Coast Guard has for intelligence, or the Army, or the CIA for that matter, although they came kicking and screaming on it. And I understand why. It's because of this kind of thing. But it is much easier now to access a broader category of intelligence than what impacts you in the job that you're doing. So I think we went too far in that, and I think now you're going to see the probably the Congress, Jody, is going to I think roll some of that back.
Well, something needs to happen. I mean, the impact of this for our allies and so forth has got to be significant. You know, that have you been able to review any of the leaked documents? Do you know kind of specifically what type of classified material we're talking about?
I haven't read them. I have had some conversations, and I think the most damaging thing is probably what we have gotten from allies. And that's so obvious that it kills any trust factor that they have with us. And I've seen that happen before. And all of a sudden you find that they're not sharing intelligence with you. But I haven't personally read the stuff, but when you start talking about the Ukraine and all that we've done to help the Ukraine, and then you start talking about them, their shortages, their weaknesses, their strategies, and that type of thing, you are just giving up an ally there, and needlessly.
Yeah, that's the point that concerns me, that I was getting to. It seems to me there is no way that something like this could happen without having enormously negative impact on our allies, as well as just the information itself. So we've got about 30 seconds. Where do we go from here?
I think they've got to go back and look at the intel reform legislation, and we've got to tighten up our counterintelligence capabilities and pay more attention to what we're doing. And I think that's one of the problems. They didn't pay attention to what they were doing when they gave this guy clearance.
General Boykin, you're a hero. Thank you so much for taking time to join us this evening on Washington Watch and bring us up to speed on this issue.
Thank you, Jody.